I have found a few more things that I'll need to focus on. I'd like to make sure that I'm not slurring my words. That's something that uh, I don't think I'm truly prone to, since my language, my native language, usually puts quite a lot of emphasis on uh, proper pronunciation, or how should I say this? A letter by letter pronunciation. Mm, We don't really uh, connect words. We make a clear distinction at the end of the word. So hopefully, if I just clear up my pronunciation in English, I'll be able to hopefully translate my own language's property to English as well. And another part of that would be to make sure that I'm not using slang words. Obviously, time and place and occasion when I'm talking with my friends, when it's some sort of an informal occasion, uh, it sounds posh and a bit pseudo intellectual uh, to force myself to speak like a dictionary, but uh, even in those situations, I strongly prefer myself to be able to not sound like either a third grader, a child, or someone who is just simply unable to use the more complex ways the language offers to present myself. So these two things are a part of a bigger picture, something of an end game for my English. So another small observation that I received thanks to doing what I'm doing, which is recording myself speaking about stuff I like. Um, I have something that directly connects to this, and that's I find it harder to stay within the boundaries that I've set for myself while recording these, more so than I've expected. Mostly because even though I still fully enjoy uh, these either games or activities, hobbies, books, gym, it's accompanied by the current state of things. And whenever I'm thinking about something, the stuff that I like, it makes me drift towards what I don't want to talk about at all in these recordings. So that was another thing that I wanted to mention, and I wanted to go back a little bit to Shadows of Undertide, that paralogue, uh, hypothetical that I've mentioned with the master and the apprentices, because I thought about it, and even during the very first chapter in the original campaign, I felt a much more of a connection to the henchmen that accompanied me on the adventures, or even the characters like Fendig and Dester, and especially Erbeth, whom you don't really get to talk too much. before the second chapter, even in the first one, I still felt something was different. I'll probably try and summarize it more coherently when I'm done with the second DLC, but I still feel that according to, I don't know if it was rumors or if it's confirmed, but the original campaign was supposedly very rushed, and yet I feel like the first DLC was even more so. Um, Something was missing. The character development did not feel really in place, and as I've mentioned, the writing felt just weaker than in the original campaign. I don't know what caused that. If it's just my misconception, if it's my nostalgia, but that's what I feel. And now I really need to start with the Hordes of the Underdark, which is the second DLC, story DLC that is somehow connected to the main game, even though you don't play as your protagonist from the original campaign. Even if you import him, it's a different person. It's the person from the Shadows of Undertide, and you begin dreaming about one of your big enemies of this DLC. You don't know that yet, but it's a Drow Metron mother who is performing some sort of a ritual, and that wakes you up just in time to watch a Drow dark elf uh, assassin or just a infiltrator spy who steals your equipment to clip your wings a little bit in the early stages of the game, so that whatever you imported alongside with your character, your inventory, it's just gone. It's gone for just small part of the DLC, but it's to make the early game feel a bit more challenging, even though the equipment that you have access to in the DLC is much stronger than anything you can get in the original campaign, and especially during the Shadows of Undertide DLC. So, the starting point this time is an inn, in the city called Waterdeep, and basically the city is under attack of the armies of the Underdark, and uh, a dungeon created by an insane mage that lies underneath the city has been breached by the Hordes, and that's where they are coming from. Um, One of the entrances to the dungeon are underneath the inn, so the owner puts out a bounty to gather adventurers willing to venture deep into the dungeon and try and locate its creator and stop somehow the invading forces from being able to use the dungeon as their spawn point. So you get to meet the innkeeper's daughter. You get to flirt a little bit since you are uh, outside of your underwear but naked, and um, obviously it doesn't lead anywhere. It's just a prologue incorporated into the first chapter, and then you get some basic equipment, and then you meet uh, the original henchmen from the campaign, four of them: Tommy, Dalen, Linu, and Sharvin. And uh, then the gets ambushed as well. You clear up some drows, and you get permission to venture outside of the inn for the first time, you get to see just a small part of Waterdeep, just basically two shops. There is a closed inn that you can't enter, some houses that you can break into, and that was introduced in the Shadow of Undertide, but there are actually consequences to doing misdeeds like breaking into homes, stealing stuff. You get evil points, you get chaotic points. So that's an interesting touch. It wasn't present in the original campaign. And once you are ready, you get a Rod of Resurrection from a priestess in case that something happened to the original henchmen. You can't recruit them before heading the to the dungeon called Undermountain, but you can find them and you can use the Rod Resurrection to bring them back to life in case something happens to them. First one you meet is Sharwin. She was ambushed alongside the other four, and then they scattered. The first floor of the dungeon is basically a puzzle with some interest, with some points of interest, uh, and you need some uh, shining rods that you use to lower some pillars, or there is another way to get into the second floor, which is uh, either beating or negotiating with the forces that originally inhabited this floor, which is fairies, led by a fairy wizard, sorcerers to be precise, and orcs led by an ogre. Mm, It depends on your alignment or just the way you want to play. You can kill them both. You can negotiate with one side, destroy the other, and then beyond the ogre in its lair, there is another entrance to into the second floor. So you have options, and you also get to meet a talking sword. There is a dragon statue that you can fight. It's an old dragon, weaker than the ones in the original campaign. You won't have any problems with it. And in the second floor, you meet the rest of the henchmen. You can either resurrect them, send them back to the inn, or you can recruit two of them as your companions. So you meet the first two on the first floor, Sharvin and Dalen, and on the second floor, it's Linu and Tommy. Um, Once you are done with the first floor and finish either the puzzle, it's not even a puzzle, it's really not complicated, or you blow up the barricade and go to the second floor through the entrance in the ogre's lair. In the second floor, you need to retrieve 4 chains for another small puzzle. You meet some prisoners, slaves that are actually disguised monsters, Rakasha, and that's where you can meet Linu. She tried to help them, but unfortunately they deceived her, and she was then killed. And you can again resurrect her, send her back, or bring her with you into the third level of the dungeon, which is where you meet your first drow, who's not an enemy, Nathira, a possible companion from the very end of the dungeon and the first chapter onwards. She is someone who betrayed the usual ways Drow behave. She worships a different goddess, not Love, as most of them do, but Elistrei, who is a goddess of dancing, I think, in the lore, and she was sent to semi-recruit you, semi-help you against the forces that endanger the camp of the refugees, betrayers of the usual ways. So she helps you in basically just offer some advices, give some information. Then you finally meet Halester, who actually puts some sort of a slave geese on you and forces you to go after the leader of the hordes that were attacking Waterdeep in his stead. So that's what you do without much of a choice. You get teleported to Underdark, uh, right in front of the leader of the forces opposing the person. She's called Valshares, the Mother Matron of the attacking forces, and you meet the seer for the first time in person, and that's the end of the first chapter. So next time, chapter 2, maybe 3 as well. We'll see how fast it goes.